The rain fell harder than it had all week, soaking the streets in silver sheets of water. Daniel Harper tightened his coat around himself as he hurried across the empty park, his shoes splashing through puddles that reflected the flickering street lights. It was supposed to be a quick jog before picking up his son from his sister's house. But fate had other plans. Through the heavy curtain of rain, he caught sight of a small figure sitting alone on a park bench. A little girl no older than 6, hugging her knees, trembling in the cold. Something about the way she sat there, soaked and silent, made his heart twist painfully. Where are her parents? He thought, scanning the empty park around him. His instincts, the ones sharpened by years of being a single dad, kicked in immediately. He rushed toward her, kneeling beside the bench, his voice calm but urgent. "Hey, sweetheart, are you lost?" The girl didn't answer. Her lips trembled, her hair plastered to her cheeks by the rain, and in her small hand, she clutched a broken pink umbrella. Daniel gently wrapped his coat around her, feeling the tiny shivers of her body against his chest as he picked her up. "Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the beauty of unexpected reunions, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts." Daniel hurried to his truck, settling the girl in the passenger seat and turning the heater on full blast. She looked at him cautiously, her eyes wide and glistening, eyes that felt strangely familiar, though he couldn't quite place why. "It's okay," he said softly, handing her a towel from the back seat. "You're safe now. We'll find your family." She whispered something then, barely audible over the hum of the heater. "I was looking for my mommy, but I can't find her." The words pierced him. He'd known that same helpless fear years ago when his own son Jamie was just 3 and had wandered off in a grocery store. He took her to the local police station, but there had been no reports of a missing child yet. The officer on duty suggested keeping her warm for the night while they tried to locate her parents. So, Daniel took her home. He made her hot cocoa, wrapped her in Jaime's old dinosaur blanket, and watched as she drifted into sleep on the couch. There was something so fragile and pure about her presence that filled the quiet house with a warmth he hadn't felt in years. She looked like she belonged there, as if fate had placed her in his life for a reason. As Daniel watched the rain outside his window, his mind drifted back to a name he hadn't said in years, Emily Carter, his first love. The woman he thought he'd spend his life with. They had met in college, shared dreams of building a future together, but life had pulled them apart after graduation. He chose responsibility over romance when his girlfriend at the time, not Emily, became pregnant. Emily had left town shortly after, heartbroken. He hadn't seen her since. But now, as he watched the sleeping girl clutching the edge of the blanket, something in her features, the curve of her nose, the small dimple in her chin, made his heart stop. She looked so much like Emily. The next morning, Daniel cooked breakfast for both of them. Jamie, now 8, was instantly curious and protective, insisting on sitting beside the girl and sharing his pancakes. "What's your name?" he asked between bites. "Laya," she said softly, her voice steadier now. Daniel smiled at the name. "That's a beautiful name," he said. "Do you know your mommy's name, Laya?" The girl nodded. "Her name is Emily." The fork slipped from Daniel's hand. His world froze in that instant. The sounds of the rain, the clatter of dishes, even his own heartbeat seemed to fade. Emily. The same Emily he had loved. The same Emily he had lost. He stared at Laya, realization hitting him like a storm. This is her daughter. Daniel didn't know whether to feel joy, shock, or fear. Questions flooded his mind. Where was Emily now? Was she married? Did she still live nearby? Why was her daughter lost in the rain? He spent the next few hours calling local authorities again, and by noon, the police informed him they had reached the child's mother. She was on her way. When the doorbell finally rang, Daniel's breath caught in his chest. He opened the door, and there she was, standing in the same rain he had walked through last night, soaked and shaking, but just as breathtaking as he remembered. Emily Carter. Her eyes, those familiar hazel eyes that once held his entire world, met his, and for a long suspended second, neither of them spoke. Then she looked past him, spotting Laya on the couch, and ran to her, dropping to her knees as tears spilled freely. "Oh my God, baby, I was so scared." Daniel stood silently, watching the reunion, his heart pounding with a mix of relief and disbelief. Emily turned back toward him finally, her voice trembling. "You found her?" she asked. He nodded slowly. "She was in the park alone. I couldn't just leave her there." Their eyes met again, a thousand unsaid words passing between them. Gratitude, shock, and something deeper that neither could name. They sat down later after Laya had fallen asleep again, and Emily explained everything. She had recently moved back to town for work after years in another city. It had been a stressful day. A business call had kept her longer than expected, and in that small window of chaos, Laya had wandered off from the cafe where they were supposed to meet her friend. She'd spent hours searching, calling the police, praying. When she got the call that her daughter was safe, she'd nearly collapsed in relief. "I can't thank you enough," she whispered, her eyes glistening. Daniel smiled faintly. "You don't have to. I'm just glad she's safe." But deep down, it stirred something in him, the echo of what they once shared, the love that had never truly died. He wanted to say so much, to ask where she'd been, if she'd ever thought of him, but he held back. Life had changed. He was a single dad now, and she had a daughter. Over the next few days, Emily and Daniel kept in touch, mostly about Laya's adjustment after the incident. But soon, their conversation stretched beyond polite updates. They talked about parenting struggles, their careers, their regrets, and the long road that had brought them here. Every word between them carried the weight of lost years and the warmth of rediscovery. One Saturday morning, Emily dropped by with Laya to thank him properly. Jamie and Laya played in the backyard while the two adults sat with coffee on the porch. "You've done an amazing job," she said quietly, watching Jamie chase Bubbles. "Raising him alone couldn't have been easy." Daniel smiled, his gaze distant. "It wasn't, but he kept me going. He was my reason to get up every morning." Emily's eyes softened. "I always knew you'd be a good father." There was a pause, long, tender, full of things both said and unsaid. "And you?" Daniel asked finally. "How have you been really?" Emily looked down at her hands, her voice breaking just a little. "I married for a while. It didn't last. Laya's dad left when she was 2. It's just been a since then." Something shifted between them in that moment. A fragile bridge built over years of distance and unspoken pain. It wasn't just nostalgia anymore. It was understanding, the kind that only comes when two broken hearts find each other again. Not as who they were, but as who they've become. Days turned into weeks and soon their paths began to intertwine naturally. School runs, shared lunches, weekend playdates for the kids that somehow turned into coffee for two. Daniel found himself smiling more. Emily laughed again, a sound he hadn't realized he missed so much. Both of them carried scars, but together they found something resembling peace. One evening after a community event, Emily found herself standing beside Daniel under a string of warm lights, their kids laughing in the distance. "You know," she said softly, "I used to wonder what would have happened if we hadn't drifted apart." Daniel looked at her, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Maybe we were meant to find each other again when we were ready." Tears welled in her eyes, and she nodded. "Maybe you're right." The air between them was still almost sacred. It wasn't the rush of young love anymore. It was something deeper, calmer, and real. As months passed, they became inseparable. Not just as two people reconnecting, but as two families blending into one. The kids adored each other, and Daniel and Emily found a rhythm that felt natural, as if life had always meant to bring them back together. This way, the pain of the past didn't disappear, but it softened, replaced by gratitude for the second chance they'd been given. In the quiet moments, when the kids were asleep and the house was still, Daniel would sometimes look at Emily across the room and wonder how he'd ever let her go. And Emily, catching his gaze, would smile, that same soft, knowing smile, the one that said she wondered the same. Love, after all, has its own timing. Sometimes it leaves so it can find you again when you're ready to understand what it truly means. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Stories like these remind us that kindness, fate, and love have a way of finding their way home. Before we end, I want to ask you one special thing. Comment below. I believe in second chances. Let's fill the comment section with hope. Because sometimes all it takes is one act of kindness to change a life forever.